Well, g'day guys, and welcome back to the channel, and sadly welcome back to another talkie. But we have at least
Not doey.
yeah, but we have at least upgraded from my face to
Hey, I'm back.
bring the one that you guys are all here for. Really, come on, be honest.
That's not true.
Now, before we get started on this one, not sure whether you've seen in our little sort of, sometimes you put up posts during the week, we're actually hoping to record, I think, the very first Q&A. Now, obviously, last year we both did a 25 things you don't know about me and 25 things you don't know about her. Some of those were even a surprise to me. But this is going to be, I think, the first Q&A that we have recorded on the channel. So if you've got any questions to ask, they can be about our travels, the whys of travel, our van, favourite places, experiences, even some personal stuff about us.
We can choose not to answer, of course.
We will try to put together a bit of a Q&A over the next couple of weeks.
Although I'm quite forthcoming, aren't I, about me? So I probably would answer everything.
There you go, now's your chance. Ask away. But sadly, the weather in Cambridge, everyone always says the weather in Cambridge and south of England is beautiful. It has been diabolical over the last week. So still struggling to get out and record that video, sort of exploring a little bit of Cambridge and the surrounding area, which I hopefully, in fact, I'm just going to have to, I know this, I said this last week, bite the bullet, but this week I will have to bite the bullet. And so today, what we're actually going to do is a little bit of a look back on 2024. So without further ado, 2024. So we left Cambridge, I think I said this last week, we left Cambridge, travelled down through France pretty quickly because it was pretty cold. What's going on here, guys? And got into northern Spain. Now, our original plan was to head along the north coast of Spain, but within a couple of days of being there, we got a little bit of an SOS call from a pet sit that we had done the previous year. Pretty much changed our plans on the flip of a coin.
It doesn't take much for me to change everything if a dog's involved.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we headed down, did a few wonderful things on the way down. I think one of Nicola's favourite things she did on the way down south towards that first dog sit. Can she remember?
No.
Clearly was. It made a lasting memory on her. Is that you, John Wayne?
Oh, Fort Bravo.
Yes.
Was that on the way down? I can't remember the order of anything, so forgive me if I get things wrong.
This is going to be a long-ass vlog.
That was absolutely brilliant. If you take it as it is, tongue-in-cheek, all in Spanish, so you can't understand what they're saying, but you can definitely work it out. Loved it. I would go back, actually.
Yeah, really good. Get there early, because what will happen is you'll be able to, obviously, you can park your van up overnight. Can't remember exactly how much it was, but park your van up overnight. But you can get in to the place before the crowds come. You go get to see all of the shows. You then get to explore Fort Bravo whenever all the crowds have gone. And most impressively, the following morning, you can actually move your van to the normal parking lot and actually get to see the shows again. So it was
really good value. Really
tongue in cheek, but absolutely fantastic. I think
a lot of fun.
Someone here had the hots for one of the cowboys as well.
Just the one.
It's going to be a long ass day for me. So we then finished the dog sit, and by that point we had secured another dog sit in the beautiful mountains above Malaga. Now, I think this has been one of the best views that we have ever had from a home before. It was absolutely stunning. The dog sit, once again, was fantastic, but it was a wonderful dog sit. Pepsi was fantastic. And actually, the girl said to us, "Oh, you wouldn't mind coming back in a couple of weeks' time?" So at that point, we went, let's go to Portugal for a
holiday.
Yeah, holiday. And as I said in last week's video, I ended up coming down with the
shingles of the mouth, as we later found out.
Yeah. Wasn't good.
It's the most ill I think I've ever seen Nigel. It was not pleasant.
Cheers for that.
Well, for him anyway.
Yeah. And no sympathy. See, one of your 2025 resolution hasn't been to be more sympathetic towards Nigel's needs.
That's really hard.
This wouldn't be for everyone, but we really enjoyed the campsite in Albufeira, and we were actually turned on to it from Emily and Louise from Campervan. They'd been staying there for a couple of months while they were waiting on their home back in Ireland to get sorted out. And we went down there, and it was a fantastic, even though I was kind of looking at it through pretty ill eyes, it was a really good campsite. Really enjoyed it, and we might even go back in 2025. I then recovered, and we headed back to the mountains via
Was that the flamingos?
Flamingos!
Yay!
Yeah, she actually remembers something.
That was one of my highlights, actually, I think,
really
from last
good.
year.
Really good. So we went via a place where you could spot flamingos, and we thought they were going to take for like a couple of hours to spot them, and we turned the corner and there was 47,000 flamingos. So we then headed back towards the house sit, had another long weekend. I think it was over St. Patrick's Day. Another long weekend with the dogs. And I think it was around this point that we hadn't said to each other, but we had started to get a little bit, bored's the wrong word, because I still maintain that Spain and Portugal, we've got a huge amount to explore in Spain and Portugal.
We got a bit too comfortable.
Yeah.
We started to look around. We realised that we were probably the youngest by about 20 years in the area.
Yeah, easily.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, the people were lovely and everything. We were having a good time. But we thought, this isn't what we're travelling for.
Now, having said that, I think we could make a heck of a lot more of Spain and Portugal if we came in off the coast and actually stayed in the mountains and stayed in the hiking areas like we did in 2021, which was an incredible time up in the Picos. I think we had just used sort of the coastal areas and the warmer conditions. Spain was getting an unseasonably warm springtime, and we'd both started to feel it, we just hadn't been talking about it. And then over Easter, we parked up in a place for a couple of days, and that's at the point where we went, maybe it's time to do something slightly different. And that's where we came up with Greece. People probably think that we had Greece planned all along. We literally had went, well, where could we go? And we started to look at other places. Obviously, we travel on Irish passports, so we want to stay within the EU and the Schengen zone. We didn't really want to go outside of that there, mainly because we don't have the insurance on our van. So we were looking at the various countries. Croatia was mentioned, but then Greece, and we were like...
And the original plan, we thought, we'll go for a maximum of 6 weeks. And if 2 weeks in, we're just not enjoying it, we'll just head back out and we'll choose something else. And then we thought, well, to get to Greece, we've got a bit of a trek. We've got to go through, well, Italy was the best option to get the boat across. So we came up with a plan of places in Italy that we hadn't been, that we thought would be quite nice to visit.
Well, actually, before we got to Italy, we finally had the chance to visit one of Nicola's bucket list locations that she had been going on about, because every time we'd been in Europe before, we'd kind of not had the chance to go and do it. And so she said, oh, I really want to go here, really want to go here. It's going to be amazing. We got there.
Carcassonne. It's a little bit too touristy. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, the actual structure is really impressive. But it's just got shops, restaurants, cafes inside, and you have to pay to get into everything. So it was just a slight disappointment, but I think I'd build it up over years and years of wanting to go.
I think that's the problem. I think sometimes you do build it. Whenever we were in Norway and we were crossing Lofoten, and some of the locations that I had kind of seen from a photography point of view, and then whenever you get there, they are still beautiful, don't get me wrong, but you've kind of built them up a little bit too much, whereas a lot of the places that we have discovered on our travels have been almost no research done whatsoever, and they've sometimes been the best. So Carcassonne, it was okay.
I'm glad I've been, because I always wanted to go, but just accept it's going to be very touristy if you do go.
And then we came along the south of France into Italy, the crazy Italian drivers. Apologies if you are Italian watching this, and but yeah, I'm
but
sorry.
You are crazy.
I'm sorry, but especially that north didn't get too bad whenever we sort of later in the year, whenever we come back into Italy again after Greece. But those initial sort of week or so as we were travelling down through Italy were pretty traumatic. However, we did have a couple of highlights there, including we visited the 5 fishing villages of Cinque Terre, however you pronounce it. Surprised me. One of the things that surprised me most, how much we both enjoyed it, because again, as Nicola said, with the tourism in Carcassonne, we prefer to sort of maybe get off the beaten track a little bit. We were a little bit worried about the crowds, and sure enough, there are a huge amount of crowds in Cinque Terre, but it was fantastic.
But it's still really, really worth doing. And don't make the mistake that we did and just spend one day there. Spread it over a few days, because you'll get more out of it.
Yeah.
Was Girona en route to there?
Before we had got to Carcassonne.
Oh, was that in Spain? I thought it was in Italy, no?
No.
So for me, another surprise highlight was Girona. Yep. Really, really good. Was that where all the walled town, which is all completely free, and there's a lot of it, and it's a really nice town as well. So if you're going that way, don't miss Girona. Yeah. Definitely worth it.
Really good. And we've again said to ourselves that we'd like to pop back in there, because again, we only had one night there because we had a little bit of a schedule. But yeah, Cinque Terre, Pisa, we enjoyed Pisa as well, especially because, you know what, go along, get yourself the Leaning Tower of Pisa selfie, and then sit back with an overpriced ice cream and watch the carnage as other people try to get their own selfies.
Yeah, I think an ice cream was €8,
was.
so we didn't get one.
No, we actually got
Did
one
we?
off the... I'm going to have to write you a
I
script.
literally can't remember.
We went off the beaten track and you got one, and it melted
Oh, I
while we were eating
did.
back.
Yes, there's that's right. There's like a shopping area, cobbled streets where all the shops and things are. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And they are cheaper there. Yeah. One thing about Pisa, we actually weren't going to go because all the reviews we read about park-ups, people were saying about break-ins. So what we decided in the end was one of us was going to stay with the van, go see the tower, come back, and then we'd swap. But we actually found a pretty good park-up. What was it, about 20-minute walk?
I'll link it below. Yeah, a little sort of what I like to call it paid for air. So no showers or anything and no loos, but you have full emptying facilities.
Yeah.
And it's manned as well.
Yeah, it felt really secure, and we were very happy to leave the van there.
Yeah, so definitely if you are thinking of going to Pisa, that would certainly be where I would look to stay. I think we stayed for 2 nights actually, which gave us then the full day in Pisa.
And it was a really nice walk in. You kind of walk along the some of the walls. Yeah, the aqueduct, that's the one.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm not really on the ball today, am I?
Today?
Actually, this is me normal. So
And she's already had a coffee as well.
So this is me actually quite energetic.
So after Pisa, we then started to make our way sort of south and towards Brindisi, which is where we would be catching the boat. Stopped off in another couple of little towns. And again, one of the things we have found with travelling in the van, quite often we will find a surprising little place that's, you know, not on any tourism maps, simply because we've been looking for somewhere secure to stay overnight. And that was the case as we were driving down through Italy. We stayed in some wonderful little villages, great sort of atmosphere. We had a really fantastic meal in one of them as well. Can't remember which village that was in, but it was phenomenal. But I say, we're making our way towards Brindisi to get the boat over to Greece. And I pulled out of a garage and we had lost power steering and the little battery light was on. And I immediately knew that our alternator belt had snapped. Not because I'm a mechanic of any...
Say, it makes it sound like you know what you're talking about.
But our mechanic had told me that if this happens, that'll be the first thing that would go. You almost took the electricity and the auto gas thing out. Breaking down on the Italian autostrada was pretty horrific. I had one of those little triangles that you meant to put out. I put it down, a lorry went past and the triangle blew away the buggery. So that was completely pointless. And the little silver lining off that breakdown was discovering Matera, which we'd never heard of before, despite James Bond hanging out there. And it was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed exploring Matera. And the little campsite we stayed at, again, I'll link it down below, they offer a free shuttle bus a couple of times a day up and down towards, because it is about maybe 5 miles outside the town. But you offer a little shuttle bus into Matera, so we explored that over a couple of days. And then we wanted to give ourselves a couple of days before getting on the boat just to make sure the alternator belt was fine. And so we stopped off in, just outside Ostuni in Villanova. Again, another fantastic little area. And went and explored Ostuni, which again is a beautiful Italian city right on the coast.
Where we encountered the craziest bus driver ever. When we all got off the bus, everybody was actually quite relieved to be alive.
Yeah. So that then brought us to taking the boat over to Greece. We were a little bit apprehensive. Obviously, we have just spent the last 3 months in relatively comfortable surroundings, comfort in terms of always knowing that there's plenty of errors, plenty of places to park up, plenty of services. We were obviously heading into Greece where that just really doesn't exist. Of course, we had heard mixed stories about wild camping. Now, we arrived in Greece
End of April.
Yeah. And so for those, and our plan was we were literally just going to follow the road south, explore the Peloponnese, and then maybe do a little bit of island hopping. Now, certainly those first couple of months pretty much had the pick of the park-ups. And one of the things that we had completely forgotten about, but it had been many a year since we were on a Greek holiday, was the colour of the water. In fact, I remember looking at it, whenever we were coming across on the ferry, and those first few days, you'd park up, no one around, and be able to go in. The water was still quite chilly that time of year. The colour of the water and sea dips became a kind of a daily occurrence. Just beautiful. Now, as Nicola said, we had given ourselves kind of permission that if it wasn't working out for us, we would spend 3 or 4 weeks there and we would get a boat back across. I don't know about you, but within about 2 weeks, I realised that we might be there for considerably longer, because Greece really did leave a bit of a mark on our hearts. It was stunning.
One of the things for me that was instantly attractive about Greece was, apart from Nigel, I'd only ever been on package holidays before to the touristy resorts, and I hadn't realised just how nice the Greek people were. And you really see that, particularly, you know, we were travelling on the mainland and through little villages and different things like that. Absolutely lovely people.
Could not have been more friendly. Now, I'd say we travelled down through, went off in the Lefkada. We'll put a map up as to kind of, you know, where we sort of, the general route that we came to. But if you are thinking of doing Greece in your van, then please do get in touch. We can give you some highlights of sort of places that we stayed. I think one of the things that Nicola enjoyed most, especially about those first couple of months in Greece, was the
visiting all the ancient sites. And that was really what encouraged me to want to go to Greece, because I mean, I'd always wanted to go to Athens anyway. And then when we started looking into going, I couldn't believe how many sites there were. It's incredible. You know, you've got the small ones where you've got a handful of people visiting, up to the massive, you know, Athens sites, the Acropolis and everything. So there really is something for everyone. And even you enjoyed a few of them, didn't you?
I did indeed. Yeah, as I'm sure you've gathered by this channel, I wouldn't be a huge into sort of castles and ancient ruins and bits and pieces like that. Don't mind the odd one. And I did visit the odd one, but it was mostly Nicola would head in and come out sort of chatting like a chittering monkey, which I always can tell that she's had a good time. And of course, we probably only explored maybe about 50% of the sites that are actually there. So if you're into your ancient Greek mythology and ancient sites, then it's absolutely fantastic.
And the price of entry to them is quite variable. Some were reasonably cheap, I would say, for what they were, going up to, you know, quite pricey. So depending on your budget, you can pick the ones that suit you, really. Greece generally was a little bit more expensive, but I mean, we hadn't been in a long, long time. So prices have definitely gone up. So just be aware of that.
Typically what we would do during the week from a food perspective, they did only second to, I would say, Portugal. But the ready roasted chickens in Greece are
superb.
So we would quite often get a ready roasted chicken, and that would do us 2 or 3 days for food as well, just to keep the budget down. Even though if you've watched last week's video, we didn't really keep the budget down at all.
I would say that was one of the downsides of Greece, is that it makes you feel like you're on holiday, and it's quite hard to not behave like you're on holiday.
We did that a little bit too much.
Not so much at the beginning, but I think as time went on, and we could see more and more holiday makers. I think initially because there was less tourists, it wasn't so much of a temptation, but further down the line, it was very hard to resist. One other thing about Greece was obviously as the time went on, the temperatures went up, and July and August were quite difficult with the heat. We had to sleep every night with all the doors open, which meant that we ended up having to be on campsites a lot more because we didn't want to be out in the wild. Not particularly because we were worried about being robbed or anything like that, but you have got the stray dogs around, and we were just a bit worried in case, I'm sure they wouldn't get in the van, but there was just some things that put us off wanting to wild camp with all the doors open.
Yeah, and so we did, I think I said this last week, we definitely spent a little bit too much on campsites, but I guess if you then average that out and think about what people are paying for a 2-week package holiday to Greece, it kind of puts that a little bit into perspective. And just a note on that with the stray dogs, obviously we had a couple of interactions with dogs that appeared dogs and cats that appeared on the channel, both Tassus up in Carpero and also Tinker on Corfu. I would say that that's the one thing, Greece isn't unique here, there's a lot of countries out that way. You've just got to become a little bit hardened to the fact that you will come across some not very nice sights from a stray, especially a stray dog perspective. So we carried dog food in our van
and cat food,
and where possible we did feed them. Generally they were all quite sort of friendly. One of the things that kind of, as well as the heat, one of the things that put us off the hiking a little bit was obviously quite often sometimes you would come across a pack of dogs. And while we never really had any bad interactions with them, you're always concerned, especially the ones that maybe are out working dogs looking after the goats and the sheep. So that was a little bit of a downside, the heat and worrying about sort of maybe some of the dogs. We didn't do as much hiking as we wanted to in Greece. I think one of the things that surprised me most about mainland Greece was actually our trip to Athens. Now, we ended up staying in ancient Corinth. I'll put again the little link down below of the little that we stayed at, a little campsite that we stayed at. And ancient Corinth was a fantastic place to base ourselves for a couple of days. Not least the ancient Corinth itself is wonderful. Cracking little village. The ancient Corinth site itself to go and visit. The campsite we were staying on, brilliant, really, really friendly. They also offered sort of taxi rides out to the train station. And of course, then we were only about just over an hour train journey from Athens. Again, however, I think we needed to spend a little bit longer in Athens.
Yeah, we tried to do everything in a day, and again, we were there from
battered.
dawn till dusk, and we were shattered. Yeah. Just mentioned as well, Corinth Canal is nearby, and we did that one evening.
For
and
your
the
birthday.
campsite, offers trips to do that as well.
Yeah.
And if you're booking the Acropolis, do not arrive late to your time slot.
Even
You will
5 minutes
not
late.
be let in. We saw this with several people, and they were really upset, but they will not budge.
Yeah,
And be careful what camera equipment you take, because you got a mic taken off you.
they took my mic off me.
Yeah. Big fluffy one.
And then obviously for the last month in Greece, we spent our time split between two islands, Kefalonia and Corfu. Without a doubt, and I think this probably came across on our vlogs as well, we enjoyed Kefalonia 100 times more. Not 100 times more, but we certainly enjoyed our time in Kefalonia more. And especially whenever we transferred up to Argostoli, which is where we were able to sort of sit of an evening and watch the...
One of my favourite places on the whole trip.
It was just wonderful.
Yeah.
So if you were thinking, now we've only done in the van, we've only done Corfu and Kefalonia. It does sound as though out of season. That was the other problem that we had with Corfu. It was just so busy. But we hear that Crete, for example, is quite a nice place to do overwintering in the van. So maybe if we do get back across that way at some point when we do some of the other islands, just not in season. So then we came back across, and obviously one of the first things that we needed to get done was our batteries, our leisure batteries had started to go wrong. I won't go into any details because I'll link the video down below, and I talked about it last week. But cut a long story short, we ended up having to get a couple of new batteries put in. Now this dented our sort of travel budget a little bit, so we started to think about we still had a couple of months left before we had to be back in the UK, and we were going to just start making our way up into the mountains. But we thought, we'll have a couple of weeks in Slovenia. We've heard good stuff about Slovenia. It's another one of those countries that has just, a bit like Norway, has just left its mark on us. Mm-hmm. And I would say out of all the countries that we have visited, that's 20 in total now in the van, Slovenia has snuck in at number 2. I think Norway still is up there with number 1.
I would say Slovenia is like a mini Norway.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. Now, we got there in August, and the west of the country was already mobbed. In fact, trying to get a campsite was difficult enough, and then trying to stay, because quite often, in other campsites, you arrive up and they say, just pay when you leave. But you said, we want to stay a week, and they said, no, we've only got 2 days, or we won't have a space for 3 weeks' time. So if you are thinking of going to Slovenia, and you're thinking of going August timeframe, July and August timeframe, you might want to start thinking about booking your campsites.
Definitely.
Now.
I think we had to wait about almost 3 weeks to get a spot in a campsite. So
now, wild camping in Slovenia is not permitted. However, in the east of the country, there are a handful, probably about 10 free European-style airs. Some of them even coming with free electricity. And this allowed us to actually extend our stay in Slovenia without ramping up the costs, because some of the places that we stayed, now it's not as epic as the west. The west, you've got the lakes, Lake Bled and Lake Bohin, and you've also got the Julian Alps and the various other mountain ranges. But the east is no less beautiful, really, really stunning. We got, again, fantastic weather. A beautiful, beautiful country. Just be careful with your clutch. Yeah, we won't dwell on that point too much, but as you know, we burnt out our clutch. Yes. €2,000 later, and bit of a pain. But Slovenia itself, despite that, I think Slovenia is a country that, once again, it's one of those ones that we really want to get back and do a lot more with.
Yeah, it was so clean, so clean. And the people, yeah, were just lovely. And pretty much everyone spoke English, which made it easy. And the prices weren't too bad.
Yeah. The one thing I would say about, because obviously a lot of people will go to the west and they'll think about doing maybe even a long weekend. I wouldn't think you would need too long in Ljubljana.
No, 1 day's enough.
1 day.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you were the public transport system between Bled, Ljubljana and Lake Bohine is actually pretty good. And there's also campsites in and around Bohine and Bled. So I would almost base myself outside of Ljubljana and just use the public transport system because they're all within sort of 45 minutes to an hour from each other. So that would be a good sort of, if you weren't taking your van and you're just going to do a long weekend, that's probably what I would do. But spending a weekend in Ljubljana, no, I wouldn't think about that.
Unfortunately, we didn't get to the coast of Slovenia. Apparently, there is something like a 30 kilometre or 45 K coastline. But if we head back that way, I think we'd maybe try the coast and see what that's like. But we can't tell you anything about that, I'm afraid.
But Slovenia,
amazing.
Get that on your to-do list. It's wonderful. So then we came back out of Slovenia. We wanted to visit a couple of the lakes in Italy, both Garda and Como. Now, we absolutely knew that they were going to be still really touristic. I think the whole concept of having seasons now with some of these highly touristic places is a thing of the past. Okay, there might be, maybe 50% more numbers in July, but there might still be 1 billion people in September kind of thing. So you'll go to these places and it will just be very, very busy. They were nice enough. I think we preferred Como, but it was just too many people.
Yeah.
Too many people. So, and of course, we almost had the boat capsizing incident on Lake Garda as well. But unfortunately, the time that we spent in Greece, the extended time we spent in Slovenia and then Garda and Como meant that we couldn't get into the Dolomites, which was one of the things that I really wanted to do last year. But the week before we were due to go to the Dolomites, they had some pretty heavy snowfall up above 2,500 meters. And we just thought, we really don't want, as beautiful as I'm sure that would have been, our first visit to the Dolomites, we really want to be able to explore and not be sort of worrying about weather and snow and things like that. So unfortunately, there were no Dolomites for Nigel.
Oh.
So we then come up through the Black Forest, and again, weather was against us a little bit, so we weren't able to kind of stay too long in the Black Forest. I think it looks a beautiful place to explore and to hike, but again, we were just getting rained off most of the time. So I think we came through the Black Forest in about 3 or 4 days.
And there was no autumn colours by that point, was there? It was a bit too early.
A bit too early. And then just before we came back into the UK, we did our little annual trip over to Belgium, mostly this time to go and visit the Frietman in Ghent. And I don't care what Nicola says, they're still the best friet known to man. Absolutely beautiful. And I had a couple of little Belgian beers, and someone else bought some more Belgian chocolates.
So good.
And then we came back to the UK. We've been in the UK, it's obviously now January. We've been back in the UK, splitting our time between Ireland and England for about...
Just over 3 months.
Just over 3 months so far. And it looks like we still have a little bit of time to go. Well, just before we wrap this vlog up, looking back again at 2024, we thought we would do our top 3 things individually. I've got no idea what Nicola's going to say. She's got no idea what I'm going to say. So number 3 for you.
Well, this is a bit general, but I would say Slovenia as a whole country blew me away. Total surprise. Loved every part of it. Would even consider living there. I liked it that much.
You did say that quite a lot, actually. Mm-hmm. Number 3 for me would be Camping Kronos. And just the whole experience that we had and the little community that we had with Christina and Nicole and Petra? No.
Yeah, Petra.
Petra, yes.
Oh, I want that as one of mine now. I'll share that one with you as a bonus 3.
So that's my number 3. I loved being in Camping Kronos. And if you happen to be, in fact, if we do make it back to Greece, they're still open until the end of October. So hopefully we'll get back into Camping Kronos. I absolutely loved it. Number 2 for you?
Well, for me, it's got to be just a collection of the historic sites in Greece. Just blew me away. Loved it. It was totally in my element.
And you're probably going to say, oh, I want this one too. The little area that we find in Greece in Carparo.
Oh, I want that one as well. Yours are better than mine.
let me guess, that's because I probably thought about this here, even though I told you about 3 or 4 days ago. Here, Nicola, for the vlog, have a think about your top 3 things. She's the girl who crams the last minute before an exam. The air in the Greece doesn't have, I think it's got 2 or 3 European style airs. And the one we found up in Carpero, not least that we got to spend time with Tassus, the little stray dog. But the village there, seriously, check out the Park for Night reviews. The villagers, the community, the location itself, it was just fantastic. We had some issues with the batteries, of course, but would love to go back there and spend a week there. And it was just fantastic. So the little free park up in Carpero in Greece.
Yeah, I want yours.
And number 1 top thing or top experience or top whatever that we did in 2024.
You're probably going to trump this as well. You probably know what it is, actually.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do it together and sum it up in 1 word. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to do 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So our top experience or thing that we did in 2024. 3, 2, 1. Bears. Had to be. The wild bear watching, brown bear watching in Slovenia was just fantastic. And we got to experience not only a big old male coming down and rooting and tooting about, but also a female and her cub. And we were absolutely blown away. We came back to the van and we were just jumping up and down and going, oh. Well, guys, you might notice we're wearing slightly different attire. We're actually recording this little outro on a different day. But I hope you've enjoyed our little look back of 2024.
And didn't get too bored because we did go on a bit.
Yeah, it was a little bit long, which is why our plans for 2025, which was going to be in this vlog, we'll put a little bonus one out on Thursday. But for now, it's time for us to go off and...
Wake up. I'm still half asleep.
Oh yeah, different day, nothing much changes with Nicola. Right guys, well once again, thanks a lot for following along, and until next time, remember, a little bonus video on Thursday. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.